Welcome to another episode of the You Are Limitless podcast. I'm your host, Madam Chiko, coming to you from the holistic wellness space as a transformational life coach. And I thank you guys for joining me here on another episode on YALL. And if you're just now tuning in, I'm so glad to have you here with me on my journey and having me a part of your journey. And you are always welcomed and loved unconditionally here. This is my way of bringing psychology, metaphysical concepts, universal law, as well as my own story of extreme limitation due to abuse, drug abuse, and being a justice-impacted individual into the light so that we can learn to let go of what doesn't serve us and start to incorporate more of what's part of our truth. So I'm always excited about getting into our vortex, raising our vibration, and discovering more of who we truly are by letting go of the limiting, yucky, negative beliefs that keep us from our truth. And today we have a special episode with a special person who is also in a transformational spiritual space, who's just been through so much and has transformed her life completely. And it ties all into the topic that we're going to be talking about in terms of relationships crumbling. Divorce rates are up. People are separating. People are dealing with horrible, ugly custody battles that just gets really messy. And so it's really amazing to find people who have dealt with this and have been able to transform not only their lives, but their kids' lives and the lives around them. And so that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today through our amazing, wonderful guest, Maria, who you guys can find her on Instagram as the Soul's Nurse. She is a nurse and is transitioning or has transitioned out into a holistic approach to healing. And so it's really amazing to be able to sit with her and hear her story of dealing with such a toxic situation, a toxic relationship that went on for way longer than it needed to, and how she was able to use her own innate power as well as the healing power of her son in order to figure out that this isn't it and find a way out. Step by step, bit by bit. And this is going to help so many people who are going through similar things or going through custody battles and just really want to be able to know that there's a light to this all. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And Maria is a great embodiment, an amazing example here to show you guys that, as well as some of the things that she has going on as a healer, as a cacao facilitator, working with plant medicines and just doing incredible things. So I'm really excited to have her here on the show. And you guys are just going to love her presence. Just her divine feminine energy being channeled through her being, her energy, her voice, and her story. But I do want to add just a little preamble. I apparently did not have my mic turned on for the entire episode while I was recording. And because the episode's so good, I literally, and this is how you can define a negative situation, because initially I was like, no, it sounds terrible, at least from my end. So automatically my brain wanted to go there in that, oh, I need to hit up Maria and let's do this again. But no, you can still hear me, guys. And the message is powerful. So just bear with me. Next time that we have Maria on the show and anyone else, I will double check to make sure my mic is on. So lesson learned. We're going to thug it out, essentially. But y'all enjoy the show. I'm so happy to have you guys here with us. And you're just going to have such a great time. And don't forget, if you have any comments that you want to leave in the notes, anything, you can always reach out. All opinions are welcomed here. And again, you are loved. So here we have Maria. Maria is the Soul's Nurse. And she has just been doing such incredible work, not only on herself, but also with the people that she's working with in being the conscious facilitator here to help raise the vibration of the earth, just like we all are doing. Maria, I met her on one of our retreats. She works with plant medicines such as ayahuasca and other plant medicine. She's also a cacao facilitator, art workshop facilitator, spiritual coach, just an amazing spirit to be with. And I'm so glad to have you here on the show with me, helping those who really want to step back into their power and need a little guidance. And that's what we're here to do. So thank you, Maria, for being on the show. How are you?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I feel like you wrapped everything up in just a nutshell. Yeah, I'm so happy, blessed, and grateful to be here. Thank you for having me, for reaching out, for wanting to know a little bit about my story. I know we talked about sometimes getting to that place of enlightenment and that journey to get there and to help others, which is what we're doing. You know, it takes a little bit of times to confront darkness. And so I appreciate you taking the time to hear the darkness that I went through and kind of get a little bit more understanding of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely. And your story is so powerful. It resonates so deeply with me and also will resonate with so many people who have gone through this idea of separation or divorce or custody battles and have been left feeling depleted, feeling disconnected, feeling like they're spiraling and they can't find their way back up. And that's what we're going to talk about today is some of the things that we deal with in terms of relationships breaking down. And then what do we do from there? And then dealing with narcissistic abuse or just trauma, essentially, with or without a capital T. But dealing with that narcissistic abuse or manipulation, gaslighting in these toxic situations. And then showing people how you transmuted that into what you're doing today and how you're showing up for yourself and not only yourself, but for your son and for other people. So that's what we're here to talk about. And thank you for being so willing to share the space with you to share your story. So tell me a little bit about what brought you into this space of transformation. We'll, of course, dive even deeper, but what was it that was just like, had you at that breaking point of enough is enough? We'll start there and then we'll backtrack a little bit and go forward.
Yeah, no, thank you for opening the space. Honestly, what I think was the pivotal moment or point of my life that brought me to transformation, and it's been multiple of them, was when I left my son's father. He was 6 months old, and that was the first, I would say, transformation I had was from leaving a long-time relationship with an infant and moving out and realizing that I needed to transform that current state that I was in to give my son a better life and a life where his mother, wasn't treated a certain way. And although his father's still around and they have a relationship at that point, I would say that was a first pivotal moment where I said something needs to change. And I didn't know what exactly. I just knew that what did need to change at that moment was me leaving. And then I, took that leap of faith, not really knowing on the other side what was going to await me. And then sadly enough, 2 months later was a pandemic that came, but we got through it. And through all of that, there have been numerous transformations. But I would say that was the first pivotal one.
Yeah. Why did you decide to leave? What was it that led to that? What was it that you decided, if I don't leave now, this will continue going on?
Numerous reasons, but I just remember at that time I was feeling extremely disconnected from him as a partner, but also him as a father. And I didn't foresee him changing. I had numerous conversations with him about going to therapy, going to counseling, but the abuse got a little bit more severe and certain languages that he would use or say. Yeah, I didn't foresee our situation changing. I actually saw it and kind of foresaw it, like getting worse. I was shriveling from the inside out, just dying. And I realized like my son didn't need that kind of mother at that time.
Right.
And I really became very fearful for how I was feeling, for if I stay, what will happen to me, which ultimately affects my son.
Yeah.
It almost felt like I was being beat by a baseball bat, but in my head. And I got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore.
Thank you for sharing. And I really want to talk about like your state of being while you were in this relationship. And I know that you said that it was roughly 10 years, and that's a really, really long time to be in a state of disempowerment, essentially. And I know so many people can resonate with that. And staying in relationships for one reason or another. And there's no judgment, there's no shame, none of that, even though we absolutely can feel that the majority of the time while we're in these situations, while we're in these relationships. So I'm curious as to like what your state of being was and how you regulated yourself, if you did, during the relationship.
That's a really beautiful question. My state of being during the relationship was, there were moments of happiness, and then there were moments of sadness, grief, because with any type of trauma bond or narcissistic abuse, there's always the love bomb and then the attacks, and the love bombing and the attacks. So I do recall moments of happiness. I can't tell you that those were true moments of happiness. I perceived them to be as such at that time. And my state of being kind of towards the end was, especially during my pregnancy and after, was a lot of sadness, a lot of depression, a lot of grieving that the loss of the relationship was coming, but I didn't want to accept it. I lived in denial for a long time. I tried to stay because I'm like, well, now I have a son and maybe this will change. Maybe now, like, it'll help him realize, now that the baby's here, that what he's doing is wrong,
Right.
and how he's acting is wrong. But maybe for this baby, not that I had the baby because of him, it's just once the baby came, maybe this will turn things around. And I can tell you right now that it won't, and it can't, because we can't change others. I was grieving myself, the relationship, the fact that if I left, that meant I had to share my son. And
Yeah.
so some ways that I self-regulated, I think, after I left was really motherhood. I had always wanted to be a mom since I was a little girl. And so my son has been my anchor. He regulated me without him even knowing, because I felt like I was a zombie walking around, not feeling anything. But every time I got to hug him, to touch him, to play with him, I was soothing at that time. He was doing this without him even knowing, but I think my son helped. He didn't even know, and he was this tiny little thing. But I would say he kept me alive. He taught me how to soothe, because I had to teach him how to self-soothe when putting him down to bed for naps, which he did very well. I think becoming a parent really helps you reparent yourself and learning to self-soothe through the children as well.
And that's really beautiful in that becoming a parent is like that, or so I hear. I'm not a parent yet. And I'm really happy that he was that kryptonite for you, that reason that you're like, okay, I don't want him to go through what we've been going through for years on end. Like, because energy, negative energy, all energy is transferable. Like, we live in an energetic world because we are energy. And so it was really important at that point that for you anyway, that at least what I'm gathering is like, now it's not even about me anymore. Okay, now it's about my son and I, and we got to move. If we don't move, this will never get better. That's a really good point, and that we do stay in situations longer than maybe warranted, because we do want things to get better. There is that hope of, I can definitely see the possibility, but we can't bank on the possibility of a maybe, and I think that's what a lot of us end up doing, and why we stay in relationships longer than we need to. And then we start to soothe in ways that are not conducive of growth, essentially, whatever it may be. I know, like with me, was drugs. I know that with many people, it's drugs and alcohol, or just toxic behaviors even. And another way too, and we can talk about this, since, you being a nurse and just having experience in the health industry and the mental health industry as well, is that we will go to antidepressants, which I am not anti mental health medication. I say this constantly because I do believe that they have its place in regulating ourselves if we're not able to do that. The goal, of course, is to become the holistic regulators that we technically are by nature, but have been conditioned otherwise through big pharma and society and what have you. But I definitely think that it becomes another crutch, right? And it may not be conducive in terms of like a holistic way of healing and growing and evolving. So what has been your experience, if any, of like antidepressants or just going through the motions of healing in terms of any therapy that you may have done or healing modalities that are more in what I would call a capitalistic system? It doesn't invalidate it, but that's just the best way to call it.
Yeah.
What's been your experience with that? And what's your take on that for those who are going that route from your experience?
Yeah, that's an extremely powerful question. I thank you for asking me that because I never like to discredit medications, pharmaceuticals, if you will. As a nurse, that's the first line of defense, quote unquote, that we're taught, right? The pharmaceuticals and these drugs will help you. And so another way that I soothe as well, besides my son, is I took antidepressants. I took Zoloft. I took Xanax. I was actually in Xanax since I was 16 years old when I was first diagnosed with panic disorder. And they said, here, take this pill when you're feeling these and it'll calm you down. And it did for 16 years. And then I was on ADHD medication. So that kind of helped soothe the ADHD craziness that was going on in my brain. I was on Vyvanse first. Then I was on Adderall. Then at some point, I was taking both of them at the same time, and
Wow.
I didn't know that you weren't supposed to. I was prescribed Vyvanse for binge eating and ADHD in 2020. And when I would take the Vyvanse in the morning, because it's such a long-acting medication, by around 3 p.m., I would start crashing. So then the provider prescribed Adderall to help me the rest of the afternoon. Come to find out a year and a half later, I was never supposed to take Vyvanse and Adderall together because I could have dropped dead at any minute because of my heart. And then I wasn't sleeping. So then I was prescribed a sleeping pill to sleep.
Oh.
And it was this vicious cycle all around. Nonetheless, it helped me get through things that I needed to get through.
Right.
But I consider medications, for especially antidepressants, kept me alive when they needed to because I was suicidal at a certain point. So at least I could kind of function. Like all of them combined helped and assisted my journey in its own way. So I don't discredit them. I think they were an ally as part of my journey to get to where I am. And I always say there's no testimony without trial. So here I am, saying, I took all these medications and they did their job and they helped me at that time. But there's another way. That's the alternative way. So I don't ever shut down medication if you need it, because they can keep you alive when you need it the most.
Exactly.
I was very, very antidepressant for my whole life, and I had been suffering of silent depression for pretty much my whole life. But I was always like, I'm not going to take them. I'm stronger than that. And I was for a certain period, but the time came when it was I either take them or I take my life.
Right.
So taking them was the answer because I needed to live. I had a 6-month-old at the time. And so they served its purpose. Yeah.
It served its purpose. And, this is something I really love to talk about, in that everything serves its purpose, even the things we don't prefer. And this is why we can have compassion for ourselves. We don't have to judge ourselves. We don't have to throw in shame, because it's just compiling a negativity with no real means to solve the issue, with no real means to elevate from that whenever we're just stuck in this oh, well, I shouldn't be doing this, or how could I have done that? The less that we throw negative attention on it, the more value we can see in why it's there to begin with. And from there, if necessary, we can transmute it. We can redefine how we're using things, how we're doing things, how we see things. And that in and of itself is really, really powerful. So I really like that you share that in terms of your story, and, talking on something as sensitive as suicide because the drugs kept me alive, and the drugs that I were on, they're hella illegal, hella like hella socially unacceptable. Okay, and it kept me alive because I had dealt with so much trauma, so much abuse, and then being a justice impacted individual in and out of the system. Like there was nothing else I knew in terms of regulating myself but drugs, and so it served this purpose. Otherwise, it was literally like, when will the day come when I just take my life? And so thank you for bringing that up. And I want those listening to not hold negative judgments against yourself and show compassion and love towards yourself, no matter what, because they're here for a reason. And what happened that had you in this state of just, I don't want to be here, and I need to take these medications, and I need to go to therapy? Because it wasn't over. He wasn't done with the manipulation, with the narcissistic behavior.
Yeah. So I left, and I had already gotten an apartment. I had gotten a lease, moved into my apartment, and went back to get some things from our house. Found another woman there. Her stuff was already there. So again, at that time, it told me that they had been having an affair for a very long time. And then the following week after that is when I handed my son over to him for the very first weekend, because for 2 weeks, he didn't see him. And so 2 weeks after I left, I was like, you're not going to see him. I don't feel safe right now. But eventually it was getting worse, and I was very weak at that time, like mentally. And he was demanding to see his son, or he was going to like turn me into the cops. And I was fearful, and I was like, okay, I'll give him over to you this weekend. Right. And it was Friday through Sunday that he kept him. And that weekend absolutely wrecked me, knowing also like there had been a woman there before. And I was just stuck in fight or flight, depression, postpartum anxiety. My thoughts were absolutely racing. I get my son back. It was raining, and my son was sleeping in his crib. And it was like a couple days before I had to hand him over again the second time. And that week, I was just a complete wreck. I was in so much unbearable pain that something took over my mind. And I was having these thoughts of, it's probably best if you kill yourself, because you won't feel this pain. And it was almost like being possessed. I can't even explain it to you. I can, because I've experienced certain things with the medicine, like where your mind tricks you. But it was really when someone asks me about that, I'm like, it's not that I wanted to do it. I knew that I had my son there. And I knew that even if like I waited to like drop him off at daycare or give him to his dad to do it, I would never do it like when he was there. But like I didn't want to. My heart didn't want to, but my mind kept tricking me that it was best if I did it, because the pain was too great and I was probably going to be a bad mother anyway. Like all these untrue things kept coming to me. Like if you were a good mother, if you were a good partner, then you would still be in that relationship. You wouldn't have left. So I was dealing with a lot of guilt. And then I was dealing with, now he's going to grow up in 2 homes. Like that shame that was overtaking my mind. And I sat there and I cried, and it literally felt like I was being possessed to think these thoughts. And I remember calling my brother. He's an ER doctor, and he was working on shift, and thank God he answered the phone, because it was like I was calling everybody that I knew, and no one picked up the phone, because I just wanted to talk to somebody, to hear somebody else's voice and not my own thoughts. And I said, I'm not okay. And I feel like he knew, because he goes, tomorrow you're going to the doctor and you're getting on medicine. And he made sure he called me. I went to the doctor, got prescribed medicine. And even then I was still scared, because I didn't know how long they were going to take to work. It usually takes approximately three weeks. But it was almost like a relief of, there's going to be something that's going to help me not think these thoughts. And I can see now how people do it, because they snap. And that's not just suicide. That's how murders happen. People get so angry and they just see red and they snap. and they murder somebody. But with suicide, I felt it. I lived it. I felt the thought that goes through people's head, and they just do it. And they never intended to sometimes.
Yeah.
They were just stuck in this room full of pain that they couldn't get out of. And that's why suicide for me is such a delicate topic, but it's also such an important topic to talk about. And mental health has always been a huge passion. This wasn't the first time that I had contemplated taking my life. The first time was when I was 16. And at that time, the person that stopped me from doing that was my brother, without him even knowing it. Like, I was already having these thoughts at 16. You're a child, you know? And I remember saying, I can't have him come up to my room and find me. Like, that would be really unfair to him. And so that thought, the thought of doing this to my brother, that he would say, hey, it's time to go to school, and he'd come grab me upstairs and find me dead, like, that thought stopped me from doing it. So he
saved you.
I'm getting emotional. Yeah.
It's just incredible. But, and you're right. It's really, really powerful, the negative voices, the things that it's telling us, and how it literally will confirm those biases by getting us to believe, getting us to buy in our lack of worth. Like, and it's incredible. The people in our lives, they don't even realize that they're helping us heal. And you're so right, because in the heat of the moment, this is why in the justice field, it's called crimes of passion. Because it's the heat of the moment where it's not rational thinking. It's the negative ego. It's the negative voices. It's other people's voices, essentially, that we have adopted as our own, that end up not even renting space, but it's like literally the mortgage is paid off, you know, and they literally will take over. So it's really important. And yes, this is a sensitive topic, but it's a necessary topic to talk about, because even at that lowest point, that's where we alchemize our truth. That's where the alchemy comes into play, even if it doesn't feel like it. So, for instance, your brother was the alchemizing factor for you.
Both times, actually.
Both times, literally. One time not realizing it, the next time he had the tools. And this is why we can show gratitude for the tools and SSRIs or traditional therapy and what have you. But as you said, it all has this place in that it's part of the journey that has led you to where you are right now. And the same thing with me. It's like, even with the clients that I work with, if I felt that there was something that they needed that was outside of my like expertise, or I felt like they did need to go seek a therapist, whatever have you, maybe it's CBT or EMDR that would help, I would refer them out, like, because I understand that that too is part of creation, and it feels really good to validate everything as is.
Right.
And so with this, dealing with the aftermaths of leaving the relationship, then comes the custody, because you have your son now. And this is what starts to transpire even more of those negative thoughts. And again, this is something that many people deal with. It's like, just when you think it's over, now you got another hill to go up. And it feels like a mountain. And it's like, when will this be over? So what was it like dealing with the custody battle?
Yeah, thank you. It didn't stop when I left. It kept going. The trials kept coming, the jabs kept coming, the punches kept coming, and I kept being knocked down to the floor, not just by my ex, but by work as well. Work was really, really rough at that time. The pandemic, so many life curveballs came. But in terms of the custody battle started about a year after I left. And on New Year's Eve, I was served by my son's father. Like, a processor came to my home. I wasn't home at the time, but I saw it through my cameras. And later on, I got a text that they were at my house to serve me some court documents. I had no idea, nothing. I had just spoken to him. I mean, we talked every day because we check in on my son. Like, he was speaking to me like normal, nothing like, hey, heads up. It was just a complete surprise. And, completely blindsided me. And it started because of certain things that he didn't want to kind of accept with his obligations. And we kept going back and forth for 2 years
Wow.
and in a lot of debt. We weren't never married, but yet it felt like it because of how much I had to spend in attorney fees. As you know, they're not cheap.
Mm-mm.
And for 2 years, it was a lot. And I felt like life was punishing me. At that time, I was still like, is this happening to me because I left? Is it happening to me because I wasn't supposed to leave? Like, I almost started second guessing the decisions that I had made. Like, it is so hard. I might as well go back. Like, those thoughts did cross my head. And I also felt like I was being punished by him too. I'm not done with you yet. It's like, you may have left, but I still control this. And when I channeled that through a custody battle, he's hitting me where it hurts me the most, which is my son. As I said, my son is my everything. Once I felt like I channeled what he was trying to do, then I was like, all right, like, let me pull up my sleeves. You're not going to get me there. Like that, not today. Sometimes a way of disarming an enemy is by knowing what they're wanting to go after. What he was wanting to go after wasn't necessarily my son, it was me, but through my son. And it made him feel powerful in a way. And hurt people. That battle was rough. It was for about 2 years. Just actually got finished last year. Finally, documents were finalized. And I said, okay, you want to put up a fight? And let's go. By the grace of God and everything, that all the angels that support me and my ancestors that protect me, we're kind of done with that battle. So
we're done with that battle. And
yeah,
it's amazing because there is another side, and it's bright and it's green and it's beautiful. Yeah. And you tapped into that through this process. I like to think that, and I do believe this, I truly do. Maybe I'm biased, but honestly, I feel like it's through the murky depths of hell can we find our truth. If we don't let it consume us and we stay in that place. So just having that awareness that this doesn't have to be this way and that we don't have to stay here can truly pivot us to the next level. And so that's when, you just start opening up to your truth and realizing, like, I am not this trauma, or I am not these past choices in this relationship or what have you. And so this alchemizing process and now becoming a facilitator of all of sorts. Okay, we'll definitely dive into this because I also want to talk about your experiences that have truly helped you come back into yourself, like really help with your sense of self-identity. And this is through ayahuasca. As for those who don't know, ayahuasca it's a plant medicine, and typically it is grown or found in South America, and in the States it's legal for religious purposes. It's a really, really amazing medicine that has helped people feel trauma, not even just emotional, mental trauma, but as well as like physical trauma as well. And Maria can dive deeper into the benefits of ayahuasca. And maybe we can have an episode alone on the benefits of ayahuasca, because I 100% am a huge advocate for the benefits of ayahuasca. But yeah, I would like to learn more about some of the ways that you have transmuted so much negativity, not even coming just from the relationship, but everything you're going with in terms of work, in terms of like the pandemic, in terms of everything, and your ability to transmute that into who you are today, what you're doing, and so forth.
Yeah, thank you. Oh my gosh, it's been a journey. I felt like I've lived so many different lifetimes in the last few years.
Literally.
Oh God, where do I start? Well, I actually had a call with a client yesterday, and she asked me kind of the same question. And I thought to myself, I was like, where do we start? And honestly, we start with, I think, two major things is really leaning into what happened to us. For me, in this case, it was learning more about narcissistic abuse and psychological abuse, because for my brain, I needed to understand, why did this happen to me? what is it and how can I understand it? Because my brain's very analytical. And so if I can find out why, then I can start creating solutions. At least that's what I think. And diving into studying it, I studied narcissistic abuse for 2.5 years to really understand what it was, but it also helped me with the custody battle because it helped me learn my enemy. And the second one, and this is, I think this would apply to any journey, is forgiveness. I started forgiving slowly, and not everything right away, of course, but I started with forgiveness of myself and of him. And I thought I had forgiven until plant medicine came along, but I would say I started with, okay, this is what happened to me. This is the abuse. How can I move forward? And yes, let me try to forgive. Like, at least I introduced that concept in my brain. But I would say learning about what happened to me helped me to kind of start walking in the path of finding more truth about the situation, but also truth about how did I fall into this trap?
Right. Yeah.
I also have accountability too. It takes two to tango. And it's like, what are some things that I did that allowed me to open the door to these kinds of relationships? And why did I attract this in my life? And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think one of them is, upbringing and childhood and attracting childhood wounds. Through the work of plant medicine, I've learned that a lot of what happens to us in this lifetime as spiritual beings having a human experience is really opportunities, situations to further evolve your consciousness and your spiritual light to the next level. And some of those may mean experiences like mine or like yours, or we're all going through something. But when I understood that concept of this was part of my process, this was part of my journey, this was part of the plan of my life so that I could have a story one day, like that's all I kept thinking. I'm like, there has to be a reason why I'm going through this. Like there just has to be. And that thirst for getting out of that space, but also for learning, why am I going through this? How is this going to serve humanity? I mean, I've been asking humanity questions since I was a child. My mom didn't know what to do with me when I asked those questions, but I kept asking that throughout my healing journey. I'm like, there has to be a purpose to this pain. I just don't know what it is, but I'm going to find out. And I'm very stubborn. So part of that was getting through all of this stuff and later discovering plant medicine. But right before that, I did a lot of counseling, EMDR, CBT therapy, and I was attending inpatient and outpatient therapy groups where we would meet 3 times a week for 3 to 4 hours a day. So it was intensive.
Yes.
And I even got kind of shut down by therapy because I was asking questions that weren't really helping me and my program. And so it was kind of disrupting their financial gain. So
what kind of questions were you asking? It's going to be like just one question or two.
Oh my gosh. They're like, you can't come to our program anymore. So I was like, that's another thing in my journey too. They're like, you can't receive therapy. We were doing a group and we were all supposed to read a statement from this paper that they had given us. So we were going around in group and I get to the statement and I was like, this is very triggering for me because it was something about, I honestly can't remember, but it was something about basically in the statement read something as to invalidate the experience or the feelings of the person that was expressing the pain. And it triggered me because it was very much like my son's father. It was like I could almost hear him say these things and invalidate how I was feeling. At the end of the class or that therapy day, I was like, this isn't helpful. I said, this is very triggering. And I wasn't the only one who shared it, but I was the one who was supposed to vocal about it. And I said, I'm paying a lot of money to come to this program. And all of these statements here are extremely hurtful and triggering. And other people started saying like, yeah, what is this? Like, I don't like this. Wow. So they sent me, and I said, I don't find this helpful at all. they sent me an email later that afternoon that I was no longer part of I was no longer, that they had dismissed me, or one of those things, from the therapy program, and that I wasn't
Wow.
allowed to come back. But that if I wanted to do TMS is when they like shock your brain, and I'm more than welcome to come back for that, because TMS is like $7,000 to
A lot of
$10,000.
freaking money.
Yeah. So I was shut out of therapy as
Wow.
well. And I think that's when I gave up on therapy at that time. But whoever's listening to this, please don't give up on therapy. Like,
Yes.
it's just find yourself a good
Find
therapy
yourself a good therapist.
clinic.
I will
Me,
say,
Mhm.
like that, just in case when people don't get turned away, like part of my spiritual journey started because of one of my therapists who was amazing. She was showing me Abraham Hicks and other channelers, and mind you, this is a therapist, you know, PhD and
Mhm.
everything, showing me these things. So you never know. It's really about who you're working with and what program you're working. So don't
E-
blanket it just from one experience, but
exactly.
know that also that shitty experiences can happen. And I think this is a really great example. Just because they are an authority doesn't mean that they're correct. So just keep
Right.
that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to share that, because I think therapy is great. It helped me in so many ways. My personal therapist at that clinic was amazing, but the therapist from the group was the one that was very invalidating towards our
Mhm.
group feelings. Yeah, this is a great example. Just if you're not feeling heard, even from somebody who is in an authoritative position, you are always your own advocate for your health. And I would say this to my patients whenever I would take care of them on the floor when I was a floor nurse. I was like, you are your own advocate. If you are not receiving what you need from me, from the doctor, from the hospital, from the therapist, from whoever, you are your own advocate always and foremost, and you have to advocate for yourself and your family.
Advocate for it.
And this just happened to be my experience, right? Like it was part of my journey. Again, it was
Mhm.
part of me experiencing what it's like to be kind of shut out when I need it the most. And it's like, well, now what? And through that, I'm like, okay, I can't go back there. I have to now find another alternative. And by this point, I had already stopped my antidepressants, because I felt like I was a little bit stronger now to stop taking
Yeah.
Zoloft. And shortly after that, I reunited with a high school friend who happened to be working for an ayahuasca community in Chicago, which is my hometown. And he had been working with ayahuasca for a very long time. And when we connected, and he kind of saw the videos on my Instagram at that time, they were also very like conscious based reels. And he kind of found me that way, which was very synchronistic. We just discovered we were kind of on the same path. And then he talked to me about ayahuasca. I was like, what? I've been wanting to do this for
That's
years.
how that works.
And he goes, yeah. I'm like, what? And like, and you know, I had calls to you. And so that was my calling. It was you, it's your time. You're with the safest person you will ever be in your life, in the safest community. And it's time. And we could talk about it for sure, but that's kind of like how that first calling to Mother Aya came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. It's incredible
Yeah.
too. It's funny how the universe works, but
Mm-hmm.
when you start acting in alignment and just in within yourself, you will find opportunities, synchronicity. Like synchronicity, there's positive synchronicity and then there's negative synchronicity. And negative synchronicities, of course, think of it, I mean, it's all the same, but think of it like as a domino effect where it's like, oh, one thing happens and then another shitty thing happens and another, and you're just like, oh my gosh. Well, we also get that too with positive synchronicities. Whenever we are stepping more into our truth and our voice and speaking out and showing
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, like not because of anything else, but it's because it's what we want to do. It's because that's what's fueling our soul. It's because that's what is helping us heal. And then you just meet people along the way that just so happen, not just so happen, because that's just how the universe works. That's how God in creation literally lines opportunities and people up that resonate with our new state of being. This is why
Mm-hmm.
I'm always about like, believing is seeing, because when you start to believe in the change in the person that you're becoming, you will then see it come to fruition. Rather than waiting for the outside world to change and then wondering why isn't anything changing, which I'm just going on a rant on that, but it's really cool that you were able to connect with this friend in this way. So it's really fascinating because all of this happening too, in terms of like the therapy and of course ayahuasca, and then we'll get into, you know, the things you're doing now to wrap it up, because despite it all, despite all the trauma and the hardship, you didn't stay there. May have been moments of defeat, okay, of falling backwards or feeling like you've fallen backwards or experiencing that loud voice in the head that just will not be quiet. But you didn't stay there and you don't stay there. And so what can you tell people? Because not everyone will necessarily like, you know, go the same path that we have.
Right.
Nevertheless, what would you say is really good takeaways in terms of alchemizing, transmuting, turning that darkness into light, knowing that even in the dark, there's still a little bit of light. And if you can just perceive just a little bit of that light, that's enough to get the ball rolling. That is it. What would you say are some takeaways from that?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. I think there's a couple of things. So I'll probably start with the first thing that you just shared, which is if you could see a glimmer of light, keep going. And what I mean by that is take a little step. Doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a jump. It doesn't have to be a run. It's just take another step. Another step may mean you make a phone call, you schedule an appointment, you shower. I went through days where I didn't feel like I didn't shower. You know, you eat a meal, you sleep. I mean, I'm naming everything that I did and that I possibly could think of, you know, and another step could be going to therapy. Another step could be showing up at an ayahuasca plant medicine retreat. Like there's so many things. Like some are little steps, some are big steps, but movement ensures survival. If we stay stuck where we are at, we will die. And that is a process of evolution. And I recently shared this in one of my reels. It's very much like Darwin's theory of evolution. Yes, the strongest and the fittest, but the one that keeps moving, the one that keeps evolving, the one that keeps transforming, the one that keeps alchemizing. Because if we don't do anything, if we don't do any of those tiny little steps or the big steps, we're not changing anything. We're not changing anything about ourselves, anything about our journey, anything about our path. So taking little steps, sometimes we think, and I know I did this, is we think we have to take big steps and we need to make big decisions. But when we really look back, it took a lot of little steps to make that big decision. Like I didn't just choose to get up and leave this relationship. Like there had been a lot of little things that I did. Was first coming to the awareness that something wasn't right, then figuring out, am I going to financially be okay? Then looking for an apartment, looking for something close by, seeking help, and then finally came to the point where I made the big jump of moving. And same throughout my healing journey, but keep going, keep taking another step. Like I said, movement ensures survival. It ensures that you're evolving, that you're adapting, that you're transforming, that you're alchemizing. In terms of alchemizing, I feel I could resonate with it in the sense of thinking of duality. So we do live in a very dualistic planet and a dualistic consciousness. And that's, in blatant terms, it's just light, dark, good, bad. Like that's how the human mind operates. And so a way that it has helped me alchemize things is I take the darkness of something, the shadow, and I think to myself, okay, what's on the opposite side of that? What's the exact opposite of that? And it could seem complicated, but really, it's really not. We make it complicated, right? But if I say, for example, this past weekend, I was dealing with a lot of anger, and this is a great alchemizing share. I wrote this prayer because I was feeling a lot of anger, and I didn't want to feel that way. I didn't want to feel anger. And I know what anger does on the scale of vibration. It brings you back down, right? So I said, I can't feel this way. It's okay to feel anger. It's a valid emotion, and you came here to be a human being, and human beings experience emotions of anger and rage and jealousy, all of those things. Doesn't mean you get to stay there. So, okay, let me transmute this. I'm feeling anger. Okay, I have tools now to help me transform this. And I wrote this prayer. And if it's okay with you, I'd love to share
Please.
this alchemizing prayer.
And it's okay with everyone else. Yes.
Yeah. And so it applies to any lower vibrational feeling and emotion. I will use anger because that's what I was experiencing at the time that I wrote it. But you can substitute for grief, sadness, whatever. And it goes a little something like this. Mother Earth, I give you my anger to transform it into light. I give you my anger to transform it into love. I give you my anger to transform it into strength. And I give you my anger to transform it into power. I am unbeatable. I am untouchable. I am unshakable. I am unbreakable. And even when I do break, I always come back to you. For you, Mother Earth, know of regenerative power. And I touched the grass and I gave her my anger and I gave her all of these compost feelings. Because when we think of compost, we think of waste. But is it really waste? It's not. It transforms. What does the earth do? It regenerates it. It transforms it. It takes the compost of fruits and vegetables and turns it into rich soil. That's alchemy. That's transmutation. That's transforming. So take all those compost feelings that you have, anger, sadness, grief, jealousy, rage, say this prayer or any prayer and go out to the earth and ground and think of that compost of you transforming into rich soil, and you alchemize that and then it rises back up. And it's very, very powerful.
So I felt the power, like tingle as you said that prayer. That was beautiful. And I will definitely put that in the show notes so that people can just copy and paste it. Like that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is so wonderful. And I love having the real life example that's like almost in real time because this literally just happened. And this goes to show that even on a healing journey, even as like any healer, right? As a coach, like we still have to transmute our negative emotions as well. It doesn't go away, but you become much more equipped to dealing with these lower vibrational energies, these low vibrational emotions. That's a really, really powerful takeaway. And thank you so much, Maria, for sharing that and sharing in general the story and just where you've come from and what you're doing. And in terms of what you're doing, I want everyone to know where to find you. It's really important for everyone to know where to find you. So, and of course, this is going to be in the show notes, but like tell them what's going on with you and how to find you, how to get connected, and some of the things that you're going to be doing here in the near future or far future.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So, well, y'all can find me on Instagram at The Soul's Nurse is the handle. As Chico said, it'll be in the show notes, right?
In the show notes.
And my website's there too. My link tree will be on there. But in terms of things that I'm doing is I've been working on, I've already been doing them as cacao ceremonies. I have a very special way of doing them. I think every cacao ceremony is absolutely beautiful. Every facilitator of it is beautiful. You've learned something from each and every experience, just like with Aya, right? There's magic that happens through the spirit of cacao, which is a very beautiful, gentle, heart-opening spirit.
Yes.
And every ceremony is different. Every topic that I do is different. Every energy that comes into the room, every ancestor that comes into the room helps us kind of guide ourselves through cacao. And I do Sandanga and Hapis ceremonies too, like in groups, privately. And the way that works is we we work through the medicine, but we also think of therapy, but with plant medicine. So think of like a therapy session with your therapist, and you're talking to her about whatever it is that is going on with you that day. But we're using other tools like cacao, sananga, hape, and we could have another episode to go into further detail about those.
Please, we will.
But yeah, I have found that through these individual and private ceremonies, or even in group ones that I've done, there's so much healing that happens from these gentle medicines, where we just sit and talk either one-on-one or in community. And we just sit there and talk and feel heard and feel that we are in a safe space, because we're all kind of sharing similar things that we've gone through. We learn from one another. We receive medicine from one another in terms of, you are the medicine, I'm the medicine, and it's community. It's a collective of healing. And, I'm blessed to be able to, in some way, open the space for that and just say, hey, whoever's free and wants to join, whether it's their first time trying the medicine or they've tried it many different times, is come and join us, come and share space with us. And there's healing that happens too, because this isn't the only healing you can do. There's so many other things. It's just another tool to add to your backpack. Yeah, absolutely. And now the art workshops, which just started last week, Chico's been to one of them.
So powerful, guys. Oh, it's so amazing. I can't wait for the next one. Really helps with grounding, and I got a lot of insight too. So the first workshop that I went to was the Earth art workshop that Maria held, and it was just so transformative. We painted with intention rocks and the clay. What is it called? The clay.
Barro.
Yeah, the barro. Yeah. The barro, and actually like slept with it next to me on my bed, like next to my pillow. And I held that intention of being grounded, because I'm an air sign as an Aquarius, and it was really important for me to really connect deeply with this idea of grounding. I had such a profound dream that Maria interpreted for me that was just so incredible, so insightful. And so I highly recommend, if you are in the area, in the DFW area, or if you'll be visiting, or if you want to fly in, everyone could be here now. Please attend, because there is healing. There's a lot of healing that goes on that you don't even realize. Like, there's just so much that you don't even realize that, hey, I feel so much better. It's like, yeah, well, parts of you probably have just gotten healed. And that's the power of being in such a high vibrational community and space, and working with people who truly see you for you, because they see themselves for who they are. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think what's really different about these art workshops is, as you know, they're more healing based. They do have spiritual teachings. And the spiritual teachings range from people who are just getting started on the journey, people who are more advanced, people that I learn from, because I don't know everything. I'll never know everything. You know, I only share what I know, and what I don't know, I learn. But that's why I hold these too, because there will be people that come in and teach me. But it's basically opening space to heal in a different way. And there's 4 elements that we work with. We work with earth, fire, water, air. We had our fire element this week, and that was extremely powerful. We worked with charcoals to channel in the fire element, and we used our hands and fingertips, because something that I shared there too is we're so connected to our electronics that we sometimes don't have any downtime to connect with ourselves and with what we are going through. So for those 2 hours that you are in class, we're connecting to that element, whether it's earth, fire, water, air, and then we're connecting to materials to set those intentions. And it was so powerful, because we worked on just that, like transmutation, alchemy, creativity, which is something that the fire element brings. And people were having insights, especially when we drank cacao with this one. I mean, hearts were opening, people were crying, like people were getting like, wait, what? I've never felt this before. Like and I was telling them, and they were sharing with me, and we both came to the mutual understanding of, there's so much healing that can happen in just little steps, like I mentioned before. And one of them was connecting to your creativity, connecting to your inner child, learning to just come out and play, and creativity and art is learning to just be free. And yeah, so each element has its own thing. Water element on next Tuesday, we'll be working with watercolors, and we'll also have really amazing experience with getting to know water in a much more different way than we know it now. Yeah. Beautiful. It'll be a cool exercise before we get to painting. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. And also thank you for being here with me and us co-creating on the You Are Limitless podcast. You are truly limitless. And thank you for being that conduit, that example for other people to follow suit if they so choose, right? But yeah, it's been so wonderful having you here with us today, Maria.
Thank you, Chiko.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Yes. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
And then, of course, we have to do, this won't be the last episode with Maria, guys, by the way, but there's so much to learn, and one episode's not enough. So we're literally just getting started. But
we're warming up the engine.
We're warming up rev that engine up. We're gonna keep it going, right? So thank you guys so much for being here with me, wanting to be more of yourself, wanting to step into your truth, and wanting to let go of those yucky, limiting, negative beliefs that keep us stuck and keep us manifesting the life that we don't prefer. And we can do this with compassion. We can do this with love and grace, and learn how we can thrive and truly start to manifest the things that are in alignment with our highest good. And it's not even about stuff per se. Sometimes it's just about manifesting a better feeling, okay? Manifesting happiness, manifesting a different perspective that's going to raise our vibration. So thank you guys so much for being here with me on the show. And of course, you guys know where to find me at Madam Chiko, which is my Instagram. I have to mention that if you do want to receive coaching of any sort, you can just DM me on Instagram or on my website. You can always book a call with me, and I will be more than happy to open up that space to figure out some of the things that you want to accomplish, some of the things you want to let go. And then from there, we can see if you are a fit for the program. Nevertheless, so glad to have you guys here. And thank you for being here on the You Are Limitless podcast. And we'll see you next time.